I'm Teresa.
I'm standing in the middle of a high-end yacht club, the air thick with tension. My mother, Amelia, is standing near the fireplace, her silver dress glinting in the warm light, but her face is a mask of terror as she sees me. My brother, Ethan, is at the bar, his face red with rage as he storms towards me. It all started when I thought I was finally going to be a part of my family. I had received an invitation to Ethan's wedding, and I was filled with hope. I bought a beautiful dress and an expensive espresso machine, thinking that this would be the moment I'd be truly accepted. I drove to my Aunt Clara's place in Charleston. The air was thick with the smell of magnolias and the promise of an approaching storm. I adjusted the garment bag on my shoulder and knocked on the door. Aunt Clara opened the door, her eyes widening in shock when she saw me. "Teresa," she said, her voice laced with panic. I stepped inside, excited to show her my dress. But then I noticed a large leather-bound album on the coffee table. The gold lettering on the cover read, "Ethan and Lily." Confused, I flipped it open. There were pictures of the wedding that was supposed to be tomorrow. Aunt Clara rushed to my side, her hands shaking. "Teresa, the wedding was last week," she whispered. I couldn't believe it. I pulled out the invitation I had received, showing her the date, June 15th. She silently walked over to the mantel and handed me another invitation. The real one, dated June 8th. I realized then that they hadn't just forgotten me. They had deliberately kept me away. For years, I had been the responsible one in the family. I was a risk analyst at a top-tier financial firm, and I was always there to fix their problems. Whether it was paying off the mortgage on our family vacation home in Myrtle Beach or covering Ethan's failed business ventures, I was the one they turned to. 2 years ago, the vacation home was on the verge of foreclosure. My father, Henry, called me in tears, saying they were about to lose the place where we had so many memories. I stepped in and created a limited liability company, Ocean View Holdings LLC, to pay off the debt and take over the mortgage. They were so grateful at the time, but they never really understood that it was a business transaction, not just a gift. At Ethan's engagement dinner, I was treated like an outsider. Ethan made a toast, hugging everyone at the table except me. He even joked that I was probably calculating the tip. That night, I went home and cried, but I still tried to be the good sister. I bought them wedding gifts and took time off work. As I drove to my parents' house on Hilton Head Island, I was filled with a cold determination. When I arrived, I heard them laughing and celebrating inside. Ethan was saying how it was a good thing I wasn't there, because I'd ruined the vibe. I walked in, and the room fell silent. Ethan shrugged and said he needed a perfect day, and I was too intense. My mother, Amelia, said the invitation was a diversion. I looked around the room and realized that I was never really a part of their family. I was just a source of money. I pulled out a manila folder from my bag. It was filled with documents that showed all the money I had spent on the family over the years. I started to list the expenses: the roof repair on the Myrtle Beach house, the foundation stabilization project, and the money I had wired to Ethan for his failed bar. I also showed them the property deed. They were shocked to learn that Ocean View Holdings LLC, which I owned, was the real owner of the Myrtle Beach house. They had signed the quit-claim deed years ago, thinking it was just a formality. Ethan lunged across the table and tried to tear up the deed, but I calmly told him that those were just copies. The originals were safe in my office. On my way back to Charleston, I received an email from a bank. It was a confirmation of a $50,000 credit line that had been opened in my name. I quickly investigated and found out that my family had been using my identity for the past 6 months. I called the fraud department of the bank and started the process of filing a fraud claim. Then Lily, Ethan's fiancée, called me. She told me that she didn't know I had been excluded from the wedding. She also found evidence that Ethan and my parents had planned everything. She even gave me access to Ethan's laptop, where I found emails showing their plan to sell the Myrtle Beach house using my forged signature. I knew then that I had to take action. I hired a tough litigator, MS Harper, and a forensic accountant, Mr. Lewis. Aunt Clara came to my office and gave me a briefcase filled with my mother's leverage file. It had emails and documents that showed how they had planned to keep me out of the wedding and how they had forged my signature on various documents. We started the process of filing a lawsuit. We implemented a full financial freeze on my accounts and set up security measures to prevent further fraud. When Ethan came to my office and caused a scene, we used the security footage as evidence for a temporary restraining order. The bank also found evidence that my family was involved in the fraudulent credit line. They were preparing to file a suspicious activity report with the federal authorities. At a mediation meeting, my parents and Ethan tried to justify their actions. But I presented them with a settlement agreement. Option A was for them to acknowledge the debt, pay it back, and vacate the Myrtle Beach house. Option B was for me to proceed with the lawsuit and hand over all the evidence to the FBI. In the end, they signed the agreement. I walked out of the mediation room, feeling a strange sense of peace. I drove to the Myrtle Beach house. It was dark, and the air inside smelled of my mother's perfume and my father's cigars. I placed the key on the kitchen table and looked out at the ocean. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I had finally broken free from the chains of a family that had used me for so long.